Hello and welcome to B.O.T. Nidal, Lakshit, Suman, and Manthan meet here to talk about the bits of tech as it relates to digital transformation. Tune in and enjoy.
All right, this is our very first stab at recording this podcast, which all of us wanted to do since a long time. I'm Manthan Shah. I work as a technical account manager at Adobe today. Been in the digital industry since 12 years now. Very excited, looking forward to doing this thing. The whole idea here is to, you know, pick a topic and speak about it, speak our experiences about it. All of us combined have a lot of digital experience under our belt, so that's what we are here to do. There is no set agenda per se. We just speak about a topic. Yeah, over to the next person. Dal.
Happy to go ahead and kick this off. Thanks, Manthan. I'm Nidal, and we've been talking about doing this for a while, just like Manthan said, just keep the conversation flowing about digital data, analytics, privacy, and a lot of other topics which we hope to touch upon. I'm a digital analytics consultant. I've been working in this space for a few years now and have a few things that I have observed, learned, and picked up over the years, and would love to talk about those items. Over to the next person.
Cool. Thanks for that intro, Nidal. It's fine that even after knowing each other for 5 years, we're still introducing each other, but that's okay.
That's for the people.
The idea is to introduce. That's for the people, sorry. The idea is to introduce ourselves to the rest of the world. Yeah, cool. The idea is we've had so many talks over the coffee chats, lunches, dinners together, and we've been discussing so many things. The idea to put together this podcast is just to share our thoughts with the world. Take some bits from the people, to see if we can break down some of those myths and concerns regarding some of these digital best practices. And with that, I'd like to introduce myself. So I'm currently working with Google as a measurement specialist. The primary focus areas that I do are one, the data integration, any tech solves that are required in order to optimize advertisers' campaigns. Basically, anything and everything to do with their advertising campaigns and concerns. Any technical blockers that they face, I come in and help them resolve those. Prior to this, I was also working with Adobe as a pre-sales consultant for their analytics, marketing cloud, and AEP practices. And there also, the idea was to do a lot of objection handling and guide our customers to get the best out of the investment that they make on the respective tools and solutions that they buy from respective organizations. So, looking forward to this conversation, really, and hoping that we are able to give something back to the community that we belong and cherish so much. Over to you, Suman.
Thank you, Lakshit. I think I'm at the wrong place because everybody's so serious. And so, three people have already set the stage and leveled up extremely that I don't really have to say why this podcast and and the history behind it. But I can quickly introduce myself. My name is Suman, and my educational background is that in statistics. I've been an analytics consultant for almost 6 years now, and I've worked in a lot of data science projects in different industries. And presently, uh, my interesting area of work is in supply chain. So I build point of views, speak to a lot of clients, and deal with a lot of problems in the analytics field. So I'll be happy to discuss as we progress in this session and the upcoming sessions.
So
Over
Suman
to
is a
you.
resident data. Suman is a resident data scientist. Uh,
Actually, do you want to
Clearly, we
come
need.
closer to your mic or speak a little higher?
Yeah, I'm saying Suman is a resident data scientist. I mean, clearly the group was, left out with all the tech and analytics people. We wanted somebody to label ourselves just to get some, badge behind ourselves that we are a credible team of people. We have a data scientist as well. So thank
Oh,
you so
no,
much
no,
for
no.
that.
Absolutely no. I think your brands and tags speak a lot, and we don't really need to bring in that credibility factor. But yes,
No, I mean,
happy
when
to.
it comes to data science, most people like me pretend their way into knowing data science by saying words like algorithm. But that's why it is good to have a point of view of somebody who has been in the system, in the core systems, and seen things. Like I got a chance to collaborate with someone once, right, on a data science problem she was solving, and it is a lot of work. It's like literally, nickel and diming each variable that you get to deal with, and you beat the best out of that variable to get values. So it's really much more than just saying algorithm or building algorithm. So that perspective would be helpful for sure. All right, so moving on, why are we meeting today, or what are we here for today, is to talk about the most burning topic in the digital industry, which is privacy. As soon as you say privacy, it is literally touching every industry at this point of time, not only digital, but since that world is changing into digital mostly, right? That's why, like, since last 12 years, all I'm doing is digital transformation. Now, if it has taken 12 years for me to build a career on digital transformation, and it has not even begin for so many businesses out there yet, I think we have a long way to go. And with that comes the mandate of privacy. So what we are talking about today is privacy as we understand, not privacy as it is, but just based on our experience on what we have encountered on privacy, and what are the scenarios we've dealt with, or how has it, really taken shape. Let's say up until 3 years ago, when I was doing certain projects, privacy wasn't the first thing. It was there, but it wasn't the first thing that came up, right? Um, Very recently, for that matter, the revamp of all websites happened, wherein when you go to the website, the first pop-up that comes is accept or decline cookies, right? That is the first real-world privacy use case that I've seen implemented. The Before that, in my opinion, privacy was spoken about, it was implemented, but it was not public per se. That's an interesting thing, and to me, those pop-ups are still annoying. Whenever somebody asks me to accept or decline cookies, those are the worst pop-ups on any website, especially on a cell phone, because um, to no one's discredit, but those pop-ups are not optimized for a cell phone experience, and it just ruins the entire experience. I have to scroll like 5 pages to go and click apps accept on certain pages. Um, anyway, I'm derailing a little. My point being that that's the first use case that I encountered where privacy really took the front seat, and then the entire market changed. Entire digital transformation projects begin at, all right, what privacy, right? What is privacy beyond the NDAs that two organizations sign? So it has been an interesting point of view so far. There are way too many things I want to speak, but let me see what you'll have to say, or what your first experience has been in terms of encountering privacy, in case any.
I think that's a really great example, right? And thanks for sharing that. In fact, it's a double-edged sword. The reason why I say that is because I'm a web analyst. I'm a digital analytics specialist. Sometimes I find it hard to explain to people what I do for a living, but I still, every time someone asks, I still try to explain. And that's one of the first examples that I used to use, right? If you go to a website, it asks you to accept cookies, and once you accept cookies, what happens in the back end is it captures some data points, and that data gets sent to a server, and we are sort of the team members that are like working behind the scenes to ensure that happens, or to collect data in a privacy friendly manner. But then it sort of works in an unexpected way, because I get the response from folks that, so you're the guy that sort of captures my credit card details. You're the guy who collects the information, whatever I do on websites. So there's explaining what we do to a layman sometimes is not so easy, but because of these recent regulations and a lot of focus on privacy, you see these cookie notices everywhere, right? Which means if any layman who gets on the internet gets exposed to these, and they know a bit about what we are doing. For example, when you explain that this is what happens. So in a way, I've used that example a lot of times to help people understand. And then the next question would be, should I accept, the cookie notice banners, right? A lot of people have asked me that. And then my take is usually, do you like ads personalization or not? And then I explain what is ads personalization, right? For somebody who um, who Googles for a reason. Now, I Google for a reason that I'm sure I might not get the best outputs in results page, but sometimes I'm okay with the ads being presented to me on Instagram for something that I'm looking for, right? If I'm okay with that, that's my personal decision. But for someone else, it might be creepy, right? So that's what I usually respond to people. But thanks for bringing up that example.
Tell me one thing, Nidal. So off late, I've been researching a lot, okay, about a lot of clients that I have to work with. And I found out particularly for the first time, I don't know which firm that was, but even under, so there was obviously necessary cookies, and then you have personalization, and then the third category, whichever that is, there were total three categories. But in under each category, there were details of, what aspect or what parameter are they capturing. And that is something that I've never seen before. So do you think that that is how it's going to be transparent in terms of, for the users? And we do come from an analytics field, so we understand because there's an overlap of information. So we know what's happening, why we've been shown all of those settings and disclaimers and everything, but a lot of people don't know. So what do you think that transparency is going to help, and have you come across many firms who actually give that level of information?
To be honest, I think it all boils down to the user. It boils down to, for example, look at a user in a specific geographic region of the world. For example, I'm based out of the Middle East, right? I'm based out of Dubai. People here do not care as much about, the privacy or the way in which their data is being collected. They might do that like inside of them. They are not so much explicit about that as compared to users in for example, European Union, right? A lot of the regulations, consumer complaints, there are even organizations that consumers have formed, just to like highlight violations of privacy breaches, etc. So that sort of thing. One is, it is very user centric. It is for some folks, the transparency in the cookie notice might be a really good thing to have, because they can read, understand, and make a sensible decision. For the other sets of users, there are a set of users that get annoyed by even a cookie consent notice showing up, right? And there are browsers designed for not showing a cookie consent banner at all. Like the browser deals with it, like a select by default approach or a reject by default approach, and then show the website without the cookie consent banner. There are browsers that do that these days for those users that do not want to even like think about, or do not want to even see the cookie consent notices, right? So I believe it is all very user centric, and it is not a binary sort of decision, right? But I think it's a great question.
But do you think then data literacy in terms of common people is a crucial aspect here, because they don't even know what amount of information is being shared with all these data world countries, and it's to an extent it's a risk. So the least that we can expect is people to be aware about it, and as you're saying, to make people aware about it is a tricky task in itself. So I think
Yeah, I mean, if I were to take that, right, so we'll get to the aspects of data literacy, but it's funny. It matters to people who understand it. To those who don't understand, they could care less. Because remember that all of this is being done for people who are not in this industry. If you're in this industry, you anyway understand it enough. But anyway, I would like to know Lakshit's take on it. And then I'll go about ranting on it.
Yeah. Uh, so before we will begin about privacy and other concerns, let's take a step back and understand why these concerns came up and when they came up, sort of. If you take a step back about 20, 30 years back when websites were launched, there was an era for .com era that came in. There was a boom in the website industry. The experiences were not really personalized to each user, frankly. Everybody saw the same website, everybody saw the same experience, everybody going through the same customer cycle, and it was all transactional in nature. The need for personalization began when people started consuming internet more and more. I mean, if you look at some of the data that's present on status, we realize that uh, year on year, I mean, there's been more than what 100% growth in internet consumption across the years. If you look from 2000 to till date, I think some 180 zettabytes of data flowing in today yearly as compared to what are less than a 1 zettabyte uh, in the earlier in the 2000s. So the idea there being that as the adoption for internet increase, as the capacity for people to buy and interact with products and services online increase, they sought the similar experience that they were getting in the brick and mortar store. They sought what kind of personalization can be achieved. Can you actually? So the demand actually came in from the users themselves. People demanded personalization. People users demanded that hey, we need more customized experiences. We are your most profitable customers. So why are expecting us to go through the same 10 steps for transaction as compared to somebody who's just first coming to your website? So which is where the overall internet and practices and industry standard practices evolved to a place where they started tracking user behavior in order to customize and personalize their experiences for them. To a while, I think for a while, for about a decade, things went well until people were not really educated. They were not really understanding the concerns. Uh, it's when there were certain people or certain industries and organizations started misusing this data for the personal gains. For example, unsolicited campaigns, unsolicited advertising, data breach. People buying data off the market. So there were marketplaces that were selling user data at what not cost. You would buy a deodorant and you'll get ads for shoes, shirts, home loans, everything. So the idea began that how the users became more cognizant of the fact that, hey, while we are interacting with one brand, why is the other brand that we don't even interact with, the competing brand especially that we don't even interact with? Why are they contacting us? Why are they advertising to us? We don't even, engage with them. And that is where some of the internet policies came in. Companies created some local policies came in earlier. Companies created their own policies. Then those evolved into more international and local policies. And now it has come to a point where even these policies have gone beyond just users and companies and have become a very political agenda and have encompassed into regional policies. So you have different regional policies for EU. You have different policies like CCPA for North America. We have a rate. In India itself, we have a new data protection bill. So a lot of these countries are now coming with their own policies, with the idea being to how to localize this data and safety. So it's not longer just privacy, but also safety concerns about the users. And my idea of privacy is not limited to just user data collection. I think people have sort of become, because as if more and more they're consuming the internet and they're reading more articles, they're spending more time over the internet, they're becoming more aware and they're understanding how their data is consumed by certain companies, and that is why they want to do that. Okay, do not give us an option to not select cookies. Uh, but that's not where the buck ends. I think privacy and safety and security is an encompassing uh, criteria that encompasses across the entire customer lifecycle. Point of data collection, data processing certificates, how are the systems interacting? Do the companies have data breach policies in place? What's the data deletion process? Like there are users who are now also demanding for data deletion access that the data deletion request should become much simpler. We do not want more information than that's necessary in the internet. So I think we're shifting towards a place where a sort of compromise is trying to be reached, where users are saying that, hey, we do need personalized experiences, but not at the cost of our privacy, not at the cost of our personally identifiable information that can be solicited for users that we did not, consent to. So they're
And
asking for, yeah.
yeah, go on, go on.
Yeah, I mean that's the idea. I mean that's really the idea that while people are asking for more and more personalization, there are stats around it. 80%, companies are delivering personalization. There are slogans and slogans around all digital analytics working towards personalization. Uh, I think we're reaching a point where personalization and privacy are becoming a conversation that cannot be held mutually exclusive to one another. and people are simply asking for more ethical ways of marketing and advertising.
But that's where I
Over to
beg
you.
to differ. I'll tell you, jumping on to personalization, which is a use case of
Mm,
privacy, right, is one way of looking at it. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but that's very far in the
mm,
cycle of where the world of privacy begins. Okay. Let me take a step back and then I'll come to this point as soon as I can. Where did privacy begin? Uh, the form of data collection changed. Um, let's say in 90s when I grew up, there were still surveys out there, those surveys on pen and paper, right?
mm,
There were companies who were paying people to just submit forms, right? And there were agents whose job was to just submit those forms, which would capture data, and then they wanted to do something about it, right? Which was not necessarily personalization. All right. So data collection in general has changed from being non-digital to digital, right? But that has always been there. The point was that earlier those documents were stored in a locker, which was called privacy, and now we store it in some cloud, which is a vault, a digital vault, and we call that privacy because we now access it with a password or whatever encryption key. So the nature of privacy has kept changing, but it has always been there in some shape and form, right? How seriously did somebody take it? It is with the evolution of internet that there is no choice but to get serious about it, as Lakshit was saying, right? You have to get serious about it. It's not mutually exclusive to personalization or any other thing out there. But I think that if you take the entire construct of personalization outside of privacy, the fundamentals of privacy still apply. If you take the digital world outside of privacy, the fundamentals of privacy would still apply. It's just about the way of application changes. Um, when you log into a website, earlier, like I distinctly remember when we were in 90s, there was still Yahoo and Rediff and all these websites, right? Every website had a standard template of the homepage being a username and a password. That's how all user journeys began, right? You didn't even get to the experience of a homepage before logging into a website. That is where privacy began for me, right? Their own content was private in nature, wherein everything that you are browsing is tied to a user login. They may not have chosen to act upon that data or even log all that user behavior data is a separate story. Where I'm getting with this is that your privacy landscape has continued to change over a period of time, but personalization is only a use case. You could leave it out and everything still applies. And the second point being that the unfortunately the end users of all of this, be it the forms that I was talking about or the digital cookies or whichever format in which you want to apply privacy I'm talking about, the end users of this could care less about how these things are done. The unfortunate part is that the industry today is so smart, it is so intelligent, the tools, the digital clouds that are available, those things are so smart that it could change things like election, change, create perception, right? And that is where it becomes dangerous. Up until then, it's like, what will you do with my phone number even if you had it, right? That was the concept before. But now it's like, if you have my phone number, you can just continue to send me SMSs for n times for a given product and brainwash me into at least browsing that product, forget buying it, right? That's the that is where I think things blew. You had data before as well, you have data even now, but the tools and processes and people became so smart that everything became consumer centric, wherein you just want to, try and influence that buying cycle. And that's where the need of privacy increased. Personalization, if I were to be very honest, how many website personalized today to a level where I would actually click on that very product which I wanted to buy, be it the bundles that they show, the recommendations that they show, or everything else. I wouldn't even say that 1% of times those personalizations or recommendations have turned out to be true for me personally. um I'm not saying that those are irrelevant. With a headphone, I will always be shown a mic to purchase, for example, which is a perfectly relevant recommendation on personalization thing. But do I want to be discreet or private about it that, hey, because you knew I was buying a headphone, that you're also showing me a mic? That is not where privacy would ideally apply. You may want to apply it there, great. But this is only about not influencing people into doing things that they don't want to do. That's where the thin line is drawn between privacy as it is and how things are stored. A very classic example, and I'll stop speaking after this. A very classic example is if the data collection companies out there today, right, the big marketing clouds that are out there today, if they choose to turn themselves to a bank, like how a well-known coffee brand has done very recently, right, wherein they have their digital cards, people keep storing money in that digital card and thinking that yes, we are going to buy coffee off this, but then that became their primary business. This is the real threat to not having privacy in place or not applying those principles by law, as Lakshit was trying to quote, right? Be it the state law or the country law, whatever it be. But if a marketing cloud company today chooses to convert to a bank, that bank would be more successful than the bank itself. Why? Because they can monetize that much data in such a way that depositing money there is much easier than anything else. I'm just trying to throw some light on how dangerous it can be, but also how people could care less about, one bank or the other. It's that dilemma that we are dealing with from what I can see at this point of time. What do you
So I'll
think?
just throw in a few keywords and then pass it over to Indal or someone. I think the key keywords are being, lack of control. When I say lack of control is over the individual, like the threat of data being advertised for anything or being used for another things. That lack of control is what's beginning there, and that lack of control uh, and demand for regulation. I think those are the three keywords that I want to just throw out there. That's really fueling this whole conversation and debate around privacy controls, regulations, and whatnots. Uh, Other than that, I'll just throw it over to Udit and so on for that point of views.
I've got a couple of thoughts here, right? Manthan, you struck a chord when you said that why would I worry about privacy in an era where, for someone like me, what if a company finds out that my preference is a specific product or a brand, right? What information can that company gain from that? What benefit comes of it? But you talked about the instances where, the impact of collecting individual preferences at scale can have a lot of, can be misused for example, you mentioned, the political reasons, for instance, those are areas where this can large scale misuse can happen. But that really struck a chord with me because, I used to think along those lines back then. And then one of the reasons why privacy is being talked about more, and across different regions, right? It's like it started in European Union, GDPR, for example, right? That's when people started talking about it. That's when a lot of consumers also started being more aware of how, they should be more careful about it. And then slowly it has started expanding to other regions. For example, US, different states of US are having their own, privacy regulations coming up. India is coming up with one of its own. I'm based out of Dubai, like I mentioned earlier. So in the Middle East also, there are a couple of countries. For example, Saudi, I think, is the one that is like more sort of pressing in the data protection regulations right now. Qatar has been trying to also churn out something. Dubai is not far behind, or United Arab Emirates is not far behind, but you will see more and more coming up, right? For organizations, it's going to be challenging. The other thing where you struck a chord is, I know which coffee brand you're talking about, which turned into, like, a bank. I think it was one of those spots where we used to catch up and we talked about doing something together, and we're eventually doing something together. So yeah, that caught my attention as well. But yeah, in terms of privacy, I think we are really just scratching the surface. There's a lot to uncover. I cannot wait to to get into some more specific topics around privacy, which are very interesting to talk about, right? Um, One thing I'll mention, which I also noticed coming up a lot with regulations these days, is dark patterns, or deceptive designs on websites. A lot of regulations in European Union as well as the US is also trying to discourage the usage of dark patterns, which is basically the use of deception in design to manipulate users into thinking that this is the route that I should take, right? A couple of good examples that I have is, you would have probably noticed this on most cookie consent banners, especially the ones that maybe a couple of years before, if you notice this, you would see that the accept button would be highlighted in green.
Grayed out.
Or it will be accentuated. It will by default look as the option that you need to click on, right? And that's a deceptive way of like manipulating a user's input. The other example I have, and I'd like to take the name of the company itself because it will be very much relatable and it's public news. Amazon had several users complaining about how the Prime membership was sort of hidden. Many users were not aware that they had signed up for Prime, and the worst thing was, the even worse thing was that it was set to auto renew, which was something that users did not like remember doing, right? So things or instances like these are like examples of dark patterns or manipulative ways that companies can sort of destroy the trust, right? And set really bad examples. But you will see more and more of these instances coming up and getting caught, and it's an everyday thing now. Across different parts of the world, you will see news articles about a new data breach, or there's a lot of aspects to this. Data breach is another one of it, but then there's also data regulations. But I just wanted to, did any of you have any experiences? I'd like to post that as a question. Did any of you have any experiences of dark pattern usage? For me, I'll talk about a quick experience before I stop my rant. I recently decided that I'm going to clean up my email inbox and like remove all those promotional emails and unsubscribe from them, right? I do not want to set up a new email address just for having a clean inbox. I decided like, let me go ahead, give that a shot, do those bulk unsubscribes and like get out of all of that spam, right? That wasn't so easy. For one, it took me a lot of time to go ahead and do that. It was a gargantuan task to just go ahead and like go by each service provider. But I also realized that there were a few of those examples where signing out or for example, opting out of communications is more difficult than opting in. Opting in is very easy. The checkbox is already selected for you in most cases. You have to unselect it, and you have to be careful about it. But opting out, I've seen cases where one, there's no link. The link for the unsubscribe doesn't exist, though it has an underline. That's funny, right? And then there are cases where the link takes you to a lengthy form which you have to fill out. And I'm not talking about the one question form which asks your emails are not relevant to me, I don't require those anymore. Those are the most common ones. But these are like, it's like you have to fill a whole set of details and explain why you want to opt out, which is not the way to go about it, right? So I did have those couple of really bad experiences, and my recommendation is go ahead, start a new email address if you want. Like, don't go for that mess if you have been using it for more than 5 to 10 years. If you want to like clean up that mess. But yeah, have any of you experienced anything similar while trying to like opt out? Looks like Lakshit, you've got some stories to share.
Yeah. I mean, similar lines here. I think exactly everybody's experienced that we all get these journals and articles from various popular newsletters talking about crypto, talking about money, talking about finances. Then there's always a prince from Nigeria who's asking for money. There's always for people uh, who want to sell you insurance. There's always folks who are in trouble and they're looking for donations. So we've all been part of that journey where we try and unsubscribe, block emails, and everything. I think what we're again trying to hint towards is the difficulty in trying to opt out and truly opt out. If I say, when I talk about truly opt out, I mean, you can of course opt out, meaning that don't send me this, don't send me that. But the idea still remains: they still have your data and your contact in their database. If they were unethical in their ways, or the company was supposed unethical in their ways, they can always, send it back to some other organization. Just like you can create a new email ID, they can spin off a new company. People are doing that. Companies are doing that. The spinning of companies and names at the click of a button. It's become like a minute's job to create a new company in today's world. There are so many. They can just switch over their ESP, which is their email service providers, to send you a new email about the same content. So no matter how many emails you create, they can always create more ESPs. So the idea then there becomes is how do we go about true data deletion? I mean, we've all seen all those Mission Impossible movies, right? I think even the recent movies are becoming a very trope about how an AI would rise up and there are thieves and what's not. Batman, I think the last Batman movie had the similar trope where they were all going about a single tool that can help them data delete across the globe.
I think that was
Then
all the
there's a
movies of late.
correct. Of late, there are so many new movies coming up. Heart of Stone, I think, similar lines. That how there's like a software out there where you just input your name or something and it will delete all your data across the globe. I mean, that idea is so appealing. But imagine if we can implement, or if we can make transparent that idea, if we can democratize that idea, even if not globally internationally, but at least to certain advertisers, certain organizations that hey, because I no longer want to engage myself. For example, I have a very bad experience with a pizza company. I no longer want to associate with it. I no longer want to get advertised. No matter even if they give me a pizza for free, I will not eat it. And I don't want to be shown their ads or anything, emails, offers, nothing. I don't want to do anything with them. I wish I didn't know about this brand. I wish I could go back to an age, where I was still a new customer for them. How can I do that? And I put a data deletion request. Does anybody even know about how to put in a data deletion request? Even I don't know. I mean, for a lot of companies, even I wouldn't know how to go about it. Do I email it to them? I mean, even if you just email it to the support team members, they'll take weeks and weeks to come back to you. So I think that's so that control that I was throwing out there, the lack of control is what's causing more concern. And if we can share some of these controls but with the user, is I think where we'll be able to achieve a more ethical means
But
of marketing and
that's
privacy
where
concerns.
I think that's where the conflict is, right?
Correct.
As Didal was saying, I'll pick off his example and yours as well, right? When you want to collect my data, or whenever you want my consent for something, that is an easy checkbox, default check.
Correct.
I just have to. It's like nobody ever reads the fine print. That's the hard truth. Only when something goes wrong, you will read the fine print, right? I remember doing that for my own credit card. Forget anything else, right? So supposed to renew after like 12 months, and then I had to read the fine print just to know if I would be getting charged henceforth, right? Because my first year was free. That's when I read it at the 13th month after being charged, only to claim it back, right? um Essentially you never read the fine print. So what is happening is, as long as you want to collect the data, it is the company's prerogative. As long as the users want to not let their data get collected, it is the user's prerogative. The problem is in the ownership. When I want something, let's say I'm the company, when I want something from you, I will take it, right? And I will put my efforts to have you click on a button which will let me take it by laws. But when you do not want it, as a company, I don't own that. I'll just build a process. It's like I've built a road in a very dense forest. If you can find me, please come find me. And then I'll do some servicing for you, right? So it's that the ownership keeps changing. I should have the right to control my data. That's yes. But should I have to control my data? No. When you took my data, or when you took any information in form of data or whichever format, it is your job to get it right in the first place. And if you can't get it right, then delete it, right? The problem right now, from where I sit, I see is that it is in the name of making it democratic, the entire prerogative has shifted to the user. Now, a digital user, um, for example, my mother, who's 60 plus years old, she's also a digital user, right? I could take like 1 year to explain her what a digital banner is, right? And probably she wouldn't care even after that, because she'd be like, yeah, big deal, you know? Yeah, okay, they have my data. What do I do about it? I'm just saying. So as soon as you have made it a user's headache, you know, as Nidar was saying, you know that your Prime membership is up for renewal, but you may not go hit that unsubscribe button well in time, and they're like, it's okay, it's just, $11, $12, let it float. And that can keep happening to n million users, and companies get to sit there and say that, yes, we followed the system. Yes, there is a system. I'm not saying that the companies are wrong. All I'm saying is that the control of these things, if the state is taking the control or if the city is taking the control, then it doesn't have to be from the users. It has to be from the user's perspective, but the ownership still has to lie with somebody who took the data. It's very silly to me, the whole idea wherein, yes, we have given you the unsubscribe button, or yes, we have given you the place, as you were saying, that you could go and put in a deletion request. To button that up, my second point there is privacy when practiced. So far what we've spoken about is the theory of it and the fundamentals of it, our perspectives, right? But in practice, privacy is very little. It's unfortunate and it's true that in practice it is very little. In practice, in a certain banks, it is still done over an Excel sheet. I'm not saying that it's not right. I'm saying that in practice, from a technology standpoint, it is very far. There are certain banks who does it on an Excel sheet with a red, blue, green field, right, indicating what is the sensitivity of each field, and then having a SaaS program build an output for it, and then do something along those lines, right? That even banks, from a technology standpoint, are struggling a lot to stitch it all together. So A, it's easier said than done. B, in practice, it's just like at field level wherein you're saying that, yes, you cannot send this data outside of your company. Now, if you think, you're basically taking me back to 90s wherein my documents are locked in a locker, and you're saying that, yes, this is sensitive information, do not open. It's exactly that, just in digital format. So my hope for all of this is that it should not be the user's headache to actually even think about privacy, because while it is done for the users, supposedly for use cases like personalization, it should also be, the fundamental of all of it is to sell, right? Is to get some sort of a conversion. And that a company is doing. So the ownership should lie mostly with the company, if not entirely. I understand the aspects of having some control with the user. I'm not saying take away the control, but I'm saying that the prerogative should be that of the companies. Third point, when you spoke about the data leak, right? You use some other word, but data breach. That's like somebody came to the same vote that I've been referring to, stole my papers and went away. So what do I do? Do I build stronger walls or do I build a bigger vault? It's like that's how the security systems work. As soon as there is a virus, there is an antidote. And virus and antidote. That's how the viruses work, and that's how the security systems work as well. Before you can think of a solution for a security, you have to first think of how to break it. And only then it is secure, right? It's like that in order to open a lock, you will need this key. Now that key, the mechanism for the key has to be strong. Then the lock is strong. Which is where I was saying that data protection is again the ownership of the company. But when they end up breaching it, yes, there are penalties that exist today by law, right? But you cannot have the law as the deterrent to everything. Let's say a company breached my data and they got penalized for it, $1 billion. Take a random number. So what? My data is still out there. That has not changed anything. So you're not solving a fundamental problem by creating a culture of, saying that, yes, this is the penalty for this. Yes, penalties are needed. I'm not saying it's not, but you really need to do a better end-to-end solution. And that all of this, all of what I said so far, can only be done with the use of better technology. There is technology out there, there is blockchain, there are so many things that can be done, and I'm not the most literate person for it. Uh, that needs to be implemented first before any of this is done, right? Such that, yes, when you entered into the vault, it can only be opened by these things, and that's it. Now whatever you put inside the vault is by default private or adheres to the rules of privacy. That's what I was thinking so far. Suman, what do you think?
Well, I think quite a lot right now. Uh, so I use some online third-party tool for converting either a Word document into a PDF or either way. Okay. Interestingly, they do mention that we're not going to save your data, and that in 30 days or in 60 days it will be out of our cloud systems, right? So that, I mean, I think as a user, as a customer here, it's very important for me to understand how long will my data reside in their systems. And that I know, I mean, even though I might not have a lot of important information in the Word document or the PDF, but it's like, it's good for mental sanity. So I understand everybody's opinion on, how the data should be collected, or, whose responsibility it is. Now, I was thinking on another tangent, okay? I've worked with a bank for a year, and obviously, all your details that there could be is available with the bank, right? But what next? Now, bank has probably 10 million customers' data. It is equally important that you maintain that data after you've collected it with everybody's consensus, right? Uh, and why this is important is in my line of work, data collection and aggregation is done by the companies themselves, as we all know. And then we plug in our analytics solution to, let's say, do a recommendation, right? So I was interestingly, so in my line of work, I was trying to, find which are the HNI customers of a bank. And by HNI, I don't mean exactly only individuals, but probably, great financial institutions, uh, as an example. So I had their data at my disposal. So, and I probably was an intern at that time, and I can do a lot with data, right? So even when you are building any sort of analytics solution, it is equally important how well are you synthesizing the data, that it is masked, there is no PII for all the people who are working in the analytics division. And at that time, I think there were easily 300 to 400 people who were a part of the analytics division. That means these 400 people have access to at least 10 million customers' data easily, right? In some capacity. I'm not saying, directly. So my understanding is that yes, it starts from the data collection, but even for a lot of firms who are into the digital and analytics space, how do they maintain that data, how well it is masked, uh, how it is aggregated? For example, in banking you have differential privacy as a framework, to make sure that you are able to do some sort of analysis without revealing sensitive information. There is Basel 3. It's again an international banking regulation that you have. It's a framework. uh, Yes, Lakshit. There are a lot of stuff like that. So I think it is important that we work even as employees in this field in a very right manner, so that you are making sure that you're not revealing or even knowing any sensitive information in the first place. So I think it works in multiple ways, data privacy, and at least in the field of data science, wherein a lot of personalization and recommendations is happening as well. It's important that we work it out in the correct manner.
I'll give you a very stupid but relevant analogy of how I see privacy at this point of time, right? And I'm not saying that I'm a proponent of it, but it's like things are being done in the name of privacy. It's like this is the law. So what should you do? For example, wearing a helmet on a two-wheeler, right? That is the law. wearing a certain kind of helmet is not the law. And that's exactly what is being done in the field of privacy, right? I could wear a helmet which can break with just a tap of a few fingers, but I'm wearing a helmet, so I followed the law, right?
Mm.
Um, it would be too much to contradict my earlier point. It would also be too much to have the lawmakers say that yes, wear a helmet with such and such standards of quality, right? Then you are just, it's like it's my life, but someone else is responsible for it. So when I was talking about the ownership and responsibility, of course, it's a two-sided thing. But right now, from what I see in the digital landscape, it is being dealt in the same helmet scenario. You're wearing a helmet. Some of them are wearing just shields and calling it a helmet. Some of them are wearing just metal sheets. Some of them are wearing plastic, but everybody wants to comply, right? It should be a thing that looks like a helmet, and you're like, yes, I followed the law. But the need of the regulation in the first place from a governmental body or anything like that has arisen because of these things, right? Wherein a governmental body has to come in and say that yes, your helmet is supposed to be of this quality. That means your data standard, your privacy standards are supposed to be of these qualities. They had to come in and intervene because, um, as a company, I couldn't get it right in the first place, right? I built a helmet that wasn't up to the mark, right? Just because I wanted to sell cheap and nice. So, um, I think that that's how privacy is being dealt with at this point of time. Just take what you like. Here are a few versions. This is how much this will cost. But if you start here, you're still within the law. So for some companies who's just a shop owner would go with the least version of the helmet, right? Because they know that they can do with this, right? They don't write daily, they write once in a month, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, right? My digital transformation does not need that much. And think about it. The whole idea of digital transformation is to accelerate the business. While companies try to do this, these are the blockers. Because then I, as a company, let's say I was a macaroon company, right? I got my website built and I'm like, yes, I'm digital today onwards. Little did I know, as the macaroon shop owner, that no, this is not even the start. A website is the last thing I needed. There had to be that helmet analogy that I was talking about on top of it before, such that all of it was shielded, um such that my, and like as a macaroon shop owner, I wouldn't know. You tell me that hey, your data is on Azure or in here in Redshift and all of that. I'm like, yeah, I need to hire people. Oh, so in the lieu of being, online, before I could get my revenue out of it, right, or even reap some benefits of it, I first have to invest um X rupees or X dollars into it, such that you could get some meat out of it. And that's where my helmet analogy comes in. To a business, those accelerators are like, yes, let's get by this. I've built a website, all right. I've implemented Google Analytics, I've implemented Adobe Analytics or whichever analytics tool out there. I've implemented this. Okay, yeah, here is a pop-up banner. Oh, there is a new thing. All right, I'll call my IT guy. Yes, please implement this. Yes, let's get that done. It's getting things done for the cheap, for the bare minimum, because the idea in the first place was not about data privacy at all for these little businesses which are coming through digital transformation. Don't even want your data, right? They are not even personalizing. For them, it is only about online existence. But still, they have to implement that banner. That's where the fun of it lies, right? Wherein, yes, the ownership should be with the organization, but if the government takes the ownership, then it's like we are making them responsible for everything. So as soon as we figured out an amicable way of ownership correctly, to someone's example, in a bank, I used to work for a bank. I had a guardrail wherein you cannot run a query with somebody's account number, right? And see that table where their account balance is. We had a very strong guardrail. All banks do, right? That
Mm.
exists since ever. But if I ran that query, it would give me the result. So if I wanted to see Nidal's account, I could do, give me all the accounts which starts with NI, and I know that one of those rows is Nidal, and then it's only about my human intelligence which comes in place. So basically, I can do it. Should I do it? No. Does the bank tell me to do it? No. Is there an NDA in place? Yes. But Does all of that actually implicate privacy? It doesn't. These are only the tools and processes that fosters the culture of privacy, but it doesn't really make it private unless you have absolutely encrypted the fields in your database. As soon as you punch in saying that yes, somebody has $1,000, that thousand should get converted to some hexadecimal format that is by default encrypted. That's where actual applications of privacy begin, and I think we're very far from that as far as tech is concerned.
I think great points overall. Love the examples, love the analogies, and I'll also tell you why I love those analogies, right? But just to summarize, right, as we reach the 1 hour mark, a couple of things we talked about. The need for privacy, bringing privacy to the forefront for companies. We also talked about why companies aren't already doing it. The technical challenges, it's not as easy, like how you said, Manthan, earlier. There it's easy for a consumer to ask that, remove me as a user from all of your systems, but that's not easy. Like it's fiction, right? As of today, it only exists in movies, and there's a lot of technical challenges, and we haven't gotten there yet in terms of it might be possible with a lot more effort, but it's not doable with the click of a button, right? We talked about the technical challenges, and then we talked about deploying privacy on a need basis. And I loved the helmet analogy, especially because I know bike riders who wear a helmet or who decide to buy a helmet not to save their lives, but to avoid paying fines, and which is exactly what companies are doing these days. Especially if you look at companies in European Union, for instance, there's a lot of cookie consent banner platforms that are getting new businesses signed in that region specifically, because companies do not want to pay hefty fines, and not because they care about privacy. Even if they claim that on their website, they might say that, right? We are having consumer trust at the center of our business, but probably the actual reason might be that they want to stay away from all the hefty fines, right? Which is very, very similar to the helmet analogy. So there's something known as deploying privacy, but at a bare minimum, just to meet the needs. And that's also very, very different, variable across different markets, across different businesses. If you're in the health industry, the type of regulations that you have to adhere is different from if you're in the financial industry, if you're a bank, right? Every sector has its own sort of rules. Every region has its own set of rules, which is also not set in stone. What rules existed in 2021 aren't the same in 2023. For example, if you look at European Union, we talked about GDPR already, but now there's something called as Digital Services Act, which actually came into prominence very recently. It has already identified, the very large online platforms such as the LinkedIn's, Twitter's, Facebook's of the world, and it's defining certain set of rules to be followed specifically for those very large online platforms, right? So companies like Meta are at the caught in the middle, especially because there has been historical instances, there has been examples, there has been concerns raised by pro privacy users, but we are living at a time where so much is unfolding, within the blink of an eye, that for companies it's very difficult to keep track of what's happening, right? And for us as users as well, we all are employees of respective companies, but at the end of the day, we are digital users as well. So we need to keep our eyes open of what's going on, what should I be careful about, right? And probably this is a step towards, if not enlightening the group of people who might listen to this, at least enlightening each one of us of how we can all be prepared better to tackle with some of these things. Any last thoughts?
Thanks for that, Nidal. Yeah, thanks for that, Nidal. Thanks. And as a parting thought, I'd just like to follow that. I think we have scared our audience enough around privacy, security, and everything, with all the concerns and debate that we had. To close it out, I think there are also some companies, who are doing well in this regard. Like there are companies. So just like in the times of COVID, a lot of the competitors came in together for a common goal of saving humanity. A lot of biomedical companies, pharmaceutical companies, they did a common research in order to save, for a common goal of, bigger than themselves. Likewise, there are very, very large organizations that are coming together with the goal of promoting privacy and promoting their own frameworks. They're working with the local, with the region, with the regions, with many countries globally. They're trying to create global privacy frameworks that can be standardized across the board. Uh, for example, just to give an example, for WhatsApp, end-to-end privacy, encryption became like a huge marketing tactic. People didn't understand what the tactic was, like what the encryption was. All it was that they advertised it so heavily that the installs increased exponentially, that it became like the first source of messaging for everybody. It beat all its competitors. And maybe their competitors were also doing end-to-end encryption. There are other platforms, there are definitely other IAMs that are also doing encryption. But because the way WhatsApp advertised it as a main core of it, people loved it. Likewise, there are a lot of most SaaS organizations, most of the startups, the SaaS startups in India. If you go to their homepage, you will realize that minimum, that almost immediately after the first fold or the second fold, you will definitely see their security certificates. They are advertising the security certificates on the homepage itself. Activation strategies. I mean, the data partnerships that most organizations have with each other, they're making it very transparent how they're doing it. They're telling them that, hey, your data will be used for, so and so purposes. So there are companies that are, letting the customers know how their data will be used and how it could be used in what shape and form. There are so many technological advancements in terms of devices. Just for example, iPhone. I mean, if you have an iPhone today, the newer ones, they're not collecting any PII data. They're not sending it to anybody. They are very strict on their privacy policies. They understand how and what not to do with user data. And likewise, there are so many browsers coming up where cookie A is not even available. Third-party cookies are not A available. B, even if they are made available, they will deprecate it themselves. Even if it's available in the first-party cookies, like some of the trackers, they'll expire them. So technology has advanced, and there's of course the new wave of AI that's doing leaps and bounds. That's leap bound ahead of its time. That's for another time, like how privacy is being managed through terms of AI and regulation. That's I think a topic for another time. But yeah, trying to put across, there are good steps and positive steps being taken in that regard as well. The idea being to promote trust amongst the companies and the users, to ensure that we continue to move towards a customer centric uh, customer centric business, a customer centric environment, while ensuring that people get the best experience out of their businesses. So that's a parting thought.
That's a lot of that's a huge parting thought, Lakshit. uh
So one more parting thought. Sorry,
yeah,
I just did anybody has anybody seen Samurai Jack?
I don't remember it. I
Oh,
might have.
Samurai Jack, come on. Dum 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 dum. Dum. Say
Yeah.
what's up? Yeah, look at Suman's bun. Doesn't that remind you of Samurai Jack?
Oh wow.
Oh,
That see, this is the exact kind of remark that ideally digital technology should mask. That's where I can see privacy going with the help of technology. My point being that, Lakshit, you're absolutely right. Um, yes, a lot of things have improved, right? Because uh, I see it from a technological lens at all times. Because in action, it has to be technology that comes to rescue, right? Because it's a technological problem. In action, it is a technological problem. Yes, conceptually, there are bodies out there who are deciding all of this, which is great for the better good. But after the concept has been decided, what will you do? You will have to use technology to apply all of that. So you're solving it from from macro, from a fundamental standpoint, and then comes the micro, which is make use of technology to actually get it implemented. And in that regard, I think we are super far. We are still talking about cookies and first party and this page and that page. And I think that somebody has to take that problem and deal it with like how Tesla dealt with self-driving cars, like nobody's business. That's like the best out there in the market today. In terms of technology, somebody has to deal with privacy like that. That's my parting thought.
okay.
Love that parting
Uh,
thought.
yes, I'll just take a minute here. All that I care is that I'm a consumer, I'm a customer at the end of the day. Companies have their own stuff to do. But as a customer, if I know that any platform has my data or any app has my data, I should have the right to delete my data in, well, in a good limited span of time. So I was just checking my emails recently because I remember I had reached out to two or three uh, platforms and asked them to delete my data because I no longer wanted to, use that app actually. And I do see the response that, we'll do it in 5 business working days. So it does, I mean, for me to sign up, it might just take 5 minutes, but for them to delete my user data, it takes them like 5 days. It's fine. I think it's still okay. At least they are responsive and they are being, right in a way to delete my data. So I think as a customer, what matters to me is that I be aware and if I am aware, I can at least ensure that 5 people around me are aware about these things, and that whoever has my data, whenever I want to delete it, it should be done, as soon as possible. The rest is everything is a gamble. It'll just keep happening. So we'll only work onwards. So yeah.
All right, Nidal, anything?
No, fair enough. I think great discussion. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We can call this a day. I think it was a great first session. Let's continue to do this more, and we will see you on the next topic very soon.